I don't know if this is the right place to report this to. I'm at home, and one of my children is dead. She was dead as a doornail. These are the exact words of Seth Welch, a couple of hours after his 9-month-old daughter Mary Welch was found dead. Dead as a doornail? Why did it take so long to report the incident? And above all, what would be the reaction when this detached and evil parent is caught? Keep watching. Seth Welch and Tatiana Fusari, the parents of 9-month-old Mary Welch, faced charges and were subsequently convicted of felony murder and first-degree child abuse related to her tragic death. The discovery of Mary's deceased body came to light on August 2, 2018, when Welch dialed 911. Prior to contacting emergency services, Welch reached out to his attorney's parents and conducted unrelated internet searches, delaying the call to authorities for approximately 3.5 hours. Investigations revealed Mary's demise resulted from severe malnutrition and dehydration, as she weighed only 8 pounds at the time of her passing. Despite the parents' claims that Mary was fed regularly, authorities found evidence to the contrary. Following the initial police response, both Welch and Fusari were interrogated at the Kent County Sheriff's Office. The interrogation room is stark and furnished minimally with uncomfortable seating arrangements. The deliberate lack of distractions aims to heighten the discomfort of the individual in the room and foster dependency on the interrogator for basic needs like sustenance and even compliments. This has been proven to grant the interrogator leverage. Seth's demeanor appears nervous, but fidgeting is a common reaction in such situations. However, what is more peculiar is the fact that he avoids making eye contact with the detective. This is the earliest sign that he has significant contempt towards authority figures. The detectives must have picked up on this and decided to begin the questioning with Tatiana, leaving Seth to wait a long time alone in the room. First, Tatiana confirms having 3 children. You will notice that all through the interview, the investigators are careful to strike a delicate balance between discussing their children and the events leading to Mary's death. They have to approach this strategically to avoid Tatiana breaking down too early. Despite Tatiana's assertion that she and Seth would seek medical attention for their children when sick, there arises a discrepancy between her statement and Seth's subsequent account. As you can see, this was the very reason why separate interviews were necessary, as it was the only way to uncover inconsistencies or cover-ups. Tatiana expresses skepticism towards medical advice, citing instances where she questioned medical recommendations. For one time, she and Seth refused to acquire a head-shaping helmet for their eldest daughter, despite medical advice. The investigators also learned that the CPS was involved in that case when said child who needed the helmet was later diagnosed with failure to thrive. This skepticism of healthcare later extended to their handling of Mary's health. As Tatiana explained, they opted for a home birth for Mary because of past negative experiences with medical institutions. Tatiana recounted feeling compelled to remain in the hospital for an extended period after childbirth, and only perceived it as a tactic to inflate medical bills. Normal situations like this were what reinforced her distrust of medical practices.
I found out that it's commission-based for these products that they try and push, but we think that they're trying to push the helmet. It was a $3,000 helmet, and called CPS and said that we were being aggressive or something out there.
Okay.
Now, let's take a moment to observe Seth, whose gaze is occasionally fixed directly on the camera. Given the recent passing of his child, one might anticipate a display of sadness or grief. Yet Seth exhibits neither of these emotions. Instead, he appears visibly frustrated to be in the current predicament, and is also clearly upset by the prolonged wait. Seth's demeanor suggests a blend of annoyance and boredom, traits often associated with an antisocial personality disorder. Such a disorder would make him feel entitled and highly annoyed by being questioned or disrespected. And in this case, this interrogation room at that moment would count as a nightmare for him. It is also possible that his frustration may stem from wondering how Tatiana's conversation with detectives regarding Mary's death is going. At some point, Tatiana mentions that Mary had extreme fatigue. She explained that Mary would sleep for a long time and still be tired after waking. Seth would also later confirm that Mary would sleep for 15 hours straight. This is highly alarming and should have prompted medical evaluation. It raises questions as to why someone as educated as Tatiana did nothing.
A couple mornings where she had been sleeping for 15, 16 hours straight.
She got up at 9 o'clock, and I'm like, you were so tired, weren't you?
And she went to bed when? The night before that?
7 o'clock.
Okay.
Then she would eat like crazy, and then she would doze off again. Like she was ready for bed immediately after eating.
Did she have a routine the last 3 days? Or
no, it was a bit erratic. I would try and keep her up just because I was worried that she was sleeping so much.
Mm-hmm.
But when she wanted to sleep, she wanted to sleep.
Tatiana then recounts finding Mary with wide open eyes. She called for Seth and recalled feeling so stunned that it was Seth who reminded her that she had CPR training.
Get Seth. It's an emergency. And he's like, and I was just so shocked that he reminded me I knew CPR. And I started CPR and I just...
Mm-hmm. I know this is tough.
So I did a 2-finger touch on her chest and her back, and I wiped her mouth, and I did, when I was pumping her chest, there was like bubbles coming out of her mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought maybe that's why I thought she choked. And then maybe if I kept pumping, maybe it would come out, and then she'd cough and wake up. It was like the bubbles, and I was giving her air and giving her, pumping with my fingers, with my 2 fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should have done more.
Nope, you're doing it right.
From this point in the interrogation, Tatiana turns fully away from the detectives. Now, facing sideways, this gesture could stem from a place of shame or guilt. She gets even more emotional when the detectives inform her that Mary's case of child death due to malnourishment is the worst they have ever seen.
I want you to think about this for a minute. I want you to think for a second and put yourself in our shoes. And then you have to go into that house and you have to look at that precious little angel. Okay? Do you think she was healthy, honestly?
When you look at her size, and you can see every single bone in her body, do you think she was healthy?
As you can see, she covers her face in shame and embarrassment. It is also possible that she is displaying what appears to be genuine emotion and accountability. However, the detectives remain vigilant. They must be aware that outward displays of emotion do not necessarily indicate genuine remorse. And they are also aware of the possibility that Tatiana's tears may stem from self-concern in the face of paying for her crimes, as opposed to genuine remorse for Mary's plight. Whatever the case may be, these were all far better responses to the situation than that of Seth, as you are about to see. After 2 hours alone in the interrogation room, detectives finally enter to question Seth. The prolonged wait could be unintentional or strategic. The Tatiana first approach possibly allowed for more information gathering. The more information they have on hand for countering, the easier it would be to get slip-ups from someone like Seth. Seth's defensive posture upon their entry indicates potential resistance to cooperation. When asked about his children, Seth also expressed disdain for the medical field. He cited past negative experiences, such as unnecessary medical observation for minor ailments, as excuses for his stance.
I am very anti-medical industry is because of what happened with... she coughed one time, so they said that they had to keep her under observation for 72 hours to make sure she didn't have a breathing problem. The bill was about $15,000. So, they even got to the point where they, the first time we changed doctors, they called CPS on us just for changing doctors. Because the doctor we were seeing was all the way in Byron Center from Cedar Springs.
As you can see, this is the first discrepancy in Seth and Tatiana's version of events. Tatiana said CPS was called over the helmet that the eldest daughter needed. But Seth is now saying it was because they changed doctors. Further discrepancies arise when Seth discusses feeding practices for Mary, as his answers contrast with Tatiana's earlier statements. Seth informs the detectives that Tatiana breastfed Mary for the first 4 months of her life. However, when Tatiana returned to work, Seth took on the majority of the feeding responsibilities. Mary was 6 months old at the time. Despite this, Seth claims Tatiana did not leave out bottles for breastfeeding Mary in the morning. So he supplemented her with 4 cups of solid food when Tatiana was absent. This appears excessive for a 10-month-old. but it does not distract from the fact that Tatiana had already said that she left out bottles for breastfeeding before leaving for work.
While you were at work, did you leave work to breastfeed, or did you leave pumped bottles at home for Seth to feed?
I left pumped bottles at home.
Okay.
The detectives then questioned Seth about Mary's underweight condition at the time of her death. Seth initially describes Mary as developmentally on track, suggesting no significant concerns until her final month. He even suggests the detectives search his garbage for evidence of baby food, perhaps in an attempt to bolster his credibility. However, Seth's assertion of putting Mary on a high-protein diet contradicts their purported lack of concern about her weight and health.
Feeding the children has never been a real part of your responsibility.
A little bit. I've been feeding like her dinner. I feed her tons of solid food. I feed her 3 or 4 of those, those Gerber cups. Yeah. She just wolfs them right down, no problem.
When did you guys start with her on solid foods?
It's been a couple months now. Maybe since April, because that's when Tatiana started working at her job.
During this part of the interrogation, Seth stumbles over his words, displaying emotional discomfort, possibly due to feelings of guilt or fear of saying something incriminating. When questioned about the delayed call to the police, Seth claimed to be uncertain about what to do in a situation like that. He finally resorted to calling his father for guidance. On this note, it suggests that there is a motive to conceal neglect and avoid arrest. But if the photos of the crime scene are any indicator, it is that the house was still filthy despite said cleanup. We can only wonder how dirty it must have been in the first place. All through the investigation, you would easily notice that Seth kept referring to Mary as the kid. This, of course, suggests emotional detachment from his daughter. Even worse, he somehow maintained a tone of indifference while speaking about her. Later, the detectives allow Seth to join Tatiana. This is an unusual move in recorded interrogations, but it can be done when the investigators believe it is crucial to observe the dynamic between co-defendants. By leaving them alone, the detectives can now confirm something they have been suspecting all along.
Hi, baby. Hi. How you doing? How are you? Happy that I'm with you now. Me too.
Seth reaches out for Tatiana's hand. While this could signify a genuine gesture of emotional support, it is also an indicator that Seth is manipulative. Given his overall demeanor, that hand could very well have been a calculated attempt to show care and also make Tatiana feel connected to him. What this tells investigators is that these two do not have a normal relationship dynamic. Also notice the maintained height difference between them. Tatiana is lowering her head to look up at him while he remains upright. This dynamic parallels the behavior seen in wolf packs, where the betas lower their heads in submission to the alpha wolf. There is clearly a power imbalance, and this just might answer the question as to why Tatiana did nothing about Mary's worsening condition. The couple was taken home afterward, but to their astonishment, they had to return the following day, August 3rd, 2018. This time, both of them were officially under arrest, and Seth would reveal his true thoughts about the situation. The detective tries to remove intent this time. By providing an alternative explanation for Mary starving to death, they hope Seth would unintentionally slip up and confess.
She's been like this for a while. He said she hadn't eaten or drank, and that's the cause of her death. You guys had a search warrant. I'm happy to renew it and have you go through my garbage and see all the baby food. Right. I'm not saying you're not a caring guy, because I think you absolutely are. I think Tatiana's a very caring lady. I think with the kids that you guys have, the farm you're trying to run, with the pressures of providing for your family, I think some meals got missed over the last couple of months. And gradually, she's been losing weight.
What Seth does indirectly admit is that Tatiana was a burden to him. By saying she was a needy kid who cried at every point, he is admitting that he might have been frustrated about having to take care of her while Tatiana was away at work.
She cries whenever something's wrong, whenever she's uncomfortable, whenever she's hungry, upset in any way. She'll let you know quick. Like she's worse than the other kids about crying. But
From this point, Seth goes on a downward spiral, blaming the healthcare system, and quite literally, everyone but himself. Even worse, he likens Mary's death to natural selection.
There's no crime in this?
Look, I know that the American court system will come up with a crime.
During her trial, Tatiana presented a contrasting narrative to investigators, claiming daily abuse, threats, and torture at the hands of Seth, all of which rendered her incapable of properly caring for Mary. In the end, she was convicted on all counts and received a life sentence with no chance of parole. Seth, too, was found guilty of murder and first-degree child abuse, receiving the same life sentence without parole. Sitting together in court, Seth and Tatiana display very distinct reactions as they await their charges and potential sentences.